Bigfoot made 4 rangers vanish in one single night, and horrifying evidence of him doing it has been found in Montana. This evidence exposes everything about the truly morbid things Bigfoot did to those rangers, and how his hunting strategy is much more intelligent than we ever imagined possible. Trail cam 4 kicks on at 6:02 in the evening, and the first thing I notice isn't the rangers setting up camp. It's the ridgeline 400 yards back, sitting there in the wide shot like a smudge somebody forgot to clean off the lens. 15 minutes later, at 6:17, a low-frequency pop rolls across the audio track, the kind of sound that doesn't belong to wind or branches or anything with a name. I rewind it 3 times before I let myself keep going, because that's the moment Bigfoot enters this footage, standing dead still on that ridge for 4 straight minutes, its head swaying side to side with a rhythm that's way too deliberate to be an animal grazing or scratching an itch. This is a body reading a room. I pull up the thermal overlay that got applied after the fact, and this is where my stomach starts to turn. The chest cavity on that silhouette is expanding and contracting in a pattern, and when I line it up against the audio of the rangers talking down at the tents, it matches. Breath for breath, syllable for syllable, Bigfoot is breathing along with their conversation from 400 yards out, like it's tasting the shape of their voices before it ever gets close enough to use them. Whatever is about to happen to Dex, Sarah, Leo, and Captain Hale, it started right here, with something enormous standing in the tree line and turning their small talk into a blueprint. The next file is Hale's body cam, timestamped 6 minutes after the trail cam picked up that pop. Roll call audio, mundane stuff, Dex griping about radio static, Sarah rambling about some plant she found, Leo laughing that nervous laugh people do when the woods feel a little too quiet. I almost skip past it until I isolate the ambient track and hear it, a fractional second echo writing underneath Hale's own voice, a harmonic duplication that has no business existing in an open field with no canyon walls to bounce off of. I check the delay against the distance to that ridge, and it lines up exactly. Bigfoot isn't just watching, Bigfoot is already rehearsing. By the time I get to the crime scene photographs, the tent is sitting there, almost peaceful, which is somehow worse. A coffee mug, Sarah's botanical journal flipped open to a blank page like she never got the chance to write in it. A signal booster nobody thought to check before they went to sleep. And then, right outside the tent flap, pressed into soft mud and facing inward toward where the rangers slept, a single dermal ridge print, twice the size of a grown man's palm. The ridge is so uniform, it reads less like a footprint and more like a signature. Bigfoot stood there while 4 people slept 10 feet away, close enough to reach in, and chose to just look instead. I sit with that print for a long time before moving forward because it tells me something about what this is. This isn't a startled animal wandering into a camp by accident. Bigfoot came to that tent on purpose, stood at that flap on purpose, and left that mark on purpose. Everything after this point in the footage is going to be Bigfoot closing a loop it opened in that first hour. And once I understand that, the rest of the night stops looking random and starts looking like a countdown. Cameras 7 and 12 pick up the next stretch between 8:15 and 10:40, and stacking the 2 angles together is what finally shows me the full shape of what's circling that camp. Bigfoot is out there at 200 yards now, tighter than before, moving in a slow counterclockwise loop around the tents. The thermal catches 2 smaller heat signatures flanking it on either side, and that detail alone changes the whole tone of this file for me. This isn't one creature stalking 4 rangers. This is a family unit working a perimeter, and Bigfoot is the one running point. Camera 12 has the piece of audio I can't get out of my head, no matter how many times I mute it and try to move on. Bigfoot opens its mouth, and instead of a growl or a roar, out comes this guttural, rapidly shifting collage of human words, stitched together with no grammar and no mercy. Sarah's laugh spliced against Hale barking, hold position, Leo's frightened little exhale looped into the mix like a drum beat. It's not talking, it's sampling. Bigfoot has taken 3 hours of ambient conversation and turned it into something closer to a chant, and it's playing that chant back into the dark like it's testing which piece gets the strongest reaction. Sarah's body cam picks up her trip down to the creek at 9:30, and this is where the sampling stops being abstract and starts getting personal. Her mic catches a whisper clean enough to transcribe, a voice doing an impression of her mother, telling her how cold it is and asking her to come find them. She spins the light around fast, and it lands on a tree that's been debarked in a perfect spiral from root to crown, stripped clean, like something ran a blade around it in one continuous motion. Nobody is in frame. Nobody has to be. Bigfoot already left the marker and already delivered the message, and now it just has to wait for her to decide whether to walk toward the sound. The photo archive from that stretch of the night lays the geometry out for me in a way that's almost clinical. Footprint casts form an unbroken 200-yard circle around the camp, each print spaced 18 inches apart, every single one angled toward the center like spokes on a wheel. Whatever is making these tracks held that exact spacing for 3 hours without a single stumble or correction, which tells me Bigfoot isn't improvising a patrol. It's executing one. And the debarked tree isn't just vandalism either, because lab work on the stripped wood turns up trace amounts of a protein compound nobody can fully identify, something that mimics human pheromones close enough to spike anxiety in anyone who gets near it. Bigfoot didn't just mark that tree, Bigfoot seasoned it. Camera 2 flips everything into a different gear at 11:05. Out of pure darkness, a rock the size of a melon materializes and catches Hale square in the shoulder. And in the same half-second, a jet of superheated steam rips out of a fissure right by Leo's feet. The microphone can't keep up with what happens next, distorting hard as Dex grabs at his ear, and even though the audio flattens out into a sub-20 Hz pressure wave that shouldn't register as anything at all, the air on camera visibly shimmers, like heat coming off asphalt. That's Bigfoot's voice at a register the human ear was never built to hold on to, and it's already doing damage before anyone even understands they're under attack. Dex's body cam from a few seconds later shows the audio going muffled, his footing giving out, and then his hand pulling a 4-inch needle-barbed quill out of his own calf, which I have to correct myself on because the field notes actually tag this injury to Sarah, and either way, the object he's holding up to the lens is not something that grows on any animal native to Montana. It's hollow, it's chitinous, and whatever coats those barbs is glistening in a way that tells me it isn't blood. Bigfoot isn't just circling this camp anymore. Bigfoot is testing what these 4 rangers are made of, one small, deliberate injury at a time, and none of it looks like an accident of nature. The forensic reports from this stretch are the part that really gets under my skin because they keep ruling out every normal explanation one at a time. Haley's shoulder shows a compression bruise with 0 blunt force trauma to the fabric, meaning whatever hit him applied that force through the air itself, hydrostatically, without a projectile ever actually striking the uniform in the way a thrown rock should. Leo's burned fingers trace back to soil that only melts north of 400 degrees Fahrenheit, confirming that steam vent didn't open on its own. It got triggered by a percussive strike to the ground, timed perfectly to Leo's position. And the quill pulled from the ranger's leg carries a neurotoxin built for exactly one purpose: freeze the muscles and crank the ears up so high that every whisper Bigfoot makes afterward lands like a shout pressed right against the skull. A single drop of blood recovered off a leaf near the injury site comes back with adrenaline levels that are, frankly, off the chart the lab normally works with, and that tells its own story. Whoever bled onto that leaf was fully conscious and fully aware while something was extracted from their leg, paralyzed but not blind, not deaf, not spared a single second of it. Bigfoot didn't want unconsciousness. Bigfoot wanted them awake for what came next, and by the time I get to the next set of files, I understand exactly why. Cameras 5 and 9 catch the moment everything breaks apart, timestamp 12:15 in the morning, and it happens in under a second. 2 screams hit the microphones from opposite directions at the exact same millisecond. Sarah's voice calling out for Hale from the north tree line, and Leo's voice calling out for Sarah from the south, both of them layered with a panic that sounds completely real. Hale and Dex bolt north, Sarah and Leo bolt south, and the thermal feed shows Bigfoot standing perfectly still right in the gap between the 2 groups as they run in opposite directions, its chest vibrating without a sound, reaching the mic. It never gives chase in this moment. It doesn't have to. Bigfoot just planted itself at the fork in the road and let 4 terrified people do the rest of the work themselves. Hale's body cam from 2 minutes later plays back a radio transmission that makes my hands go cold every time I loop it. It's Sarah's voice, technically pitch perfect, except the words are wrong for who Sarah actually is, describing her legs being crushed and begging Hale not to leave her behind. His heart rate monitor, folded into the body cam telemetry, goes from a manageable spike straight into a flatlined, arrhythmic mess. He's sprinting on borrowed panic now, chasing a voice that Bigfoot built specifically to send him in the wrong direction, and every stride he takes is one Bigfoot predicted he would take. The tracking report from the divergence point gives me the clearest picture yet of how coordinated this actually is. A length of rope lies snapped at the split, pulled apart by force rather than cut clean, and laid over the ranger's own footprints is a third set of tracks, smaller, a 6-foot stride, running parallel to Sarah's group the entire way. It's matching her gait step for step in the mud, which means Bigfoot brought a juvenile along specifically to confuse anyone trying to read these tracks later, muddying the exact kind of evidence a search team would rely on. This is a hunt with a division of labor. The adult drives the panic, the juvenile erases the trail, and Bigfoot, in whichever body is doing which job, never once loses control of the situation. Before I get to the bog, there's a stretch of footage from camera 8 that almost got filed as junk data because the frame is so shaky, and once I stabilize it, I understand why nobody wanted to sit with it for long. It picks up Sarah and Leo 40 seconds into their run south, cutting across a shallow creek bed, and for 11 seconds, the two of them are actually gaining ground, putting real distance between themselves and whatever's behind them. Then a shape drops out of the canopy directly into their path, not the adult, something leaner, faster, moving on all fours for 3 full strides before rising up onto 2 legs at the last second. Bigfoot doesn't touch either of them. It just plants itself in the creek bed, forcing their sprint to bend hard to the left, funneling them off the flat ground and up toward the rocks, toward the exact terrain that later holds the fissure. I watch that 11-second stretch 4 separate times before I accept what it actually shows me, which is Bigfoot herding, not chasing, correcting their path the way a sheepdog corrects a flock without ever once biting down. Leo's own body cam catches a few frantic seconds of that same detour, his light swinging wildly across bark and stone, and buried under his own ragged breathing is a second breathing pattern, lower, slower, keeping perfect pace behind him, no matter how hard he pushes. It's not gaining. It's not falling back. It's pacing him. The same patient rhythm I'll hear again later, pressed against the limestone. And hearing it here first tells me Bigfoot had already picked Leo's ending before Leo had picked his hiding spot. The search team's tracking log backs this up with something I almost skipped past on my first read. A secondary print trail branching off from the main chase route, cutting at an angle that intercepts the fissure a full 2 minutes before Leo's own footprints arrive there, meaning whatever was hurting him had already scouted the exact crack in the rock he was about to think was his own idea. There's a smaller piece of physical evidence from this same stretch that the initial report almost buried in a footnote, a snapped carabiner recovered from the creek bed, still clipped to a torn loop of nylon. Webbing that used to be part of Leo's climbing kit. The metal isn't bent from a fall or a snag on rock. It's sheared clean through, the kind of cut you'd expect from a tool, not a tumble. And lab analysis on the fracture edge finds microscopic striations consistent with something raking across it at speed, a claw or a nail dragged hard enough to slice hardened steel without ever slowing down the animal doing it. Bigfoot didn't need to grab Leo to control him. Cutting one strap at the right second was enough to make sure he couldn't climb his way out of the path being laid out for him. And that's the kind of precision that keeps showing up every time I think I've found the edge of what this thing is capable of. Hale and Dex's run north gets its own short but brutal entry from camera 11, timestamped just 2 minutes after the split, and it's the clearest look I get at how fast this thing can actually move when it wants to be seen doing it. The 2 men are cutting through dense brush, Hale still shouting orders into a radio that isn't reaching anyone, when a wall of branches directly ahead of them simply stops moving, like something enormous just settled into place and decided to wait. Bigfoot doesn't charge out of that brush. It just stands up out of it, unfolding to a height that makes both men flinch backward without either one screaming, and for a full 2 seconds, the 3 of them are frozen in the frame, predator and prey sizing each other up before Bigfoot simply steps sideways and lets them pass. It didn't need to stop them here, it only needed to prove it could have. Dex's own body cam picks up a detail in that same encounter that the review team flagged as a priority anomaly, a low, resonant vibration running through the audio track that doesn't match footsteps, engine noise, or wind, something closer to a held note. Sustained for the entire 2 seconds, Bigfoot is standing in frame. When the audio engineers isolate and slow that vibration down, it resolves into something horribly specific. A stretched, guttural fragment of Dex's own name, dragged out so long it barely sounds like language anymore. Bigfoot wasn't just standing there. It was already speaking to him, low enough that his conscious brain never registered it as words, planting something that wouldn't surface again until he was face down in that bog, 40 minutes later, listening to his own breath get echoed back at him. The physical evidence from this stretch is thinner than the rest, mostly because neither man stopped moving long enough to leave much behind. But the search team does recover one object worth noting: Hale's spare radio battery found 40 yards off the main route. Its casing split open, not by impact, but by what the report describes as compressive force applied evenly across the entire shell, the kind of pressure you'd get from a hand large enough to wrap fully around a device built to survive a fall onto rock. Bigfoot didn't drop that battery by accident during a chase. Bigfoot picked it up at some point during those 2 frozen seconds, crushed it in one motion, and let it fall, a small, silent guarantee that whatever call Hale was trying to get out that night was never going to leave the valley. Camera 14 picks up Dex at 1:03 in the morning, stumbling into a stagnant peat bog in the dark, and what I watch next is the slowest, most deliberate thing in the entire file. Bigfoot stays up on the bank, uproots a dead 12-foot spruce like it's pulling a weed, and uses the trunk as a lever to press Dex face down into the black water. There's no frenzy to it. The pressure comes in a steady, 3-minute rhythm, calibrated, patient, the massive hands gripping that branch and holding steady the way someone holds a door shut. Bigfoot isn't drowning Dex out of aggression. Bigfoot is drowning him on a schedule. Dex's own body cam is the hardest file in this whole case for me to sit through. The lens goes half submerged, all murky water and rising bubbles. And underneath it, his own labored, gurgling breathing gets broadcast right back at him from somewhere above the surface. Bigfoot is exhaling in perfect sync with Dex's own dying breaths, looping his last moments back into his ears as they happen, and when his final exhale finally comes, it's answered by one massive, booming inhale from directly above the water. He goes under, listening to his own death get rehearsed by something that learned to breathe exactly like him hours earlier. On that ridge, that opening scene with the chest cavity mimicking their conversation, this is what it was building toward the whole time. The recovery log fills in the aftermath once the bog gets drained. Dex's tactical vest turns up 20 feet from the water, folded with a precision that no panicked person leaves behind on their way to save a drowning friend. The spruce branch comes back covered in palm prints, too large for any bear this side of the continent, and sealed in a waterproof case on the bank sits a small audio recorder holding a 5-minute loop of Dex's own breathing, gradually, deliberately, morphing into Bigfoot's low, guttural purr by the end of the track. Bigfoot didn't just kill him, Bigfoot kept the recording. Camera 17 jumps ahead to 128 and finds Leo squeezed into a narrow limestone fissure, and this is where I start to realize Bigfoot has a different method for every single ranger, tailored, almost personal. Bigfoot arrives at the mouth of the crack, crouches down, looks in, and doesn't reach a single finger inside. Instead, it presses its chest flat against the rock face and starts beating a slow rhythm into the stone, one heavy thump every 2 seconds, and the camera sensor actually picks up the surrounding rock, shuddering fine dust sifting down off the ceiling with each impact. Leo's body cam is total darkness at this point, just his own voice whispering that he's safe right before the infrasound hits and proves him wrong. When I run the audio through a filter, it comes back locked onto a sustained 12 Hz, which happens to be close to the resonant frequency of human bone and calcium carbonate both, meaning Bigfoot picked this exact rhythm on purpose, aimed at the exact material trapping Leo and the exact material holding his skeleton together. His scream cuts off mid-breath as the ceiling above him starts shattering into sand, raining down in sheets, and the very last thing the microphone captures before the lens cracks and dies is Bigfoot humming, note for note, the same lullaby Leo's mother used to sing him, played back with a precision that leaves no room to call it coincidence. The excavation crew digs 15 feet into that collapsed fissure and comes up with nothing but pulverized limestone dust and Leo's crushed helmet, flattened the way a hydraulic press flattens a can, and yet there's no blood, no tissue, nothing you'd expect from a body caught under that much rock. What they do find, Laced through the dust itself is a fine red-tinged particulate that matches Leo's DNA, which tells me his body wasn't just buried under that stone. It got folded into it. And when they finally pull the SD card and play back that final lullaby file, it runs backward, every note reversed, like Bigfoot recorded a message and then deliberately scrambled it before letting anyone hear it a second time. Camera 21 is stationed behind a 30-foot waterfall, and it catches Sarah at 2:10 trying to hide inside the curtain of falling water like it might actually shield her. It doesn't. Bigfoot steps through that wall of water like it's nothing heavier than a light drizzle, completely unbothered by 30 feet of freezing runoff pouring straight down. A massive, hairy arm reaches through the cascade and closes around her ankle, and instead of yanking her out into the open, Bigfoot holds her under, submerged in the plunge pool, her face just beneath the surface, where the clear, dark water lets the camera catch every second of it. Her own body cam lurches downward in the same instant, framing pale, almost webbed-looking fingers wrapped tight around her boot. Underneath the constant roar of the falls, a soft motherly whisper somehow cuts clean through the noise, telling her it's okay, telling her to just go to sleep, using her own mother's voice like it's been sitting in storage waiting for this exact moment. Her struggling slows down over the next minute and a half until it stops completely, and the picture fades out to white, right as her body goes still. Bigfoot didn't drown her the way it drowned Dex. Bigfoot lulled her. The dive team searches the pool downstream and never recovers a body, only Sarah's botanical sampling kit wedged between two rocks near the base, and inside it, a single long gray hair with a medulla pattern that doesn't match any known primate on record. Her body cam turns up completely dry on the bank, placed there instead of dropped there, which is its own kind of message. And on the final frame of playback, right after her death, the reflection sitting on the water's surface distorts for exactly one frame, wearing her face and her uniform for a heartbeat before the footage cuts. Bigfoot leaves nothing behind by accident, and that includes this. Camera 25 catches the last stand at 3 o'clock in the morning, high up on a rocky ridge where Hale has clearly decided he's not running anymore. He fires a flare straight at Bigfoot, and for 3 full seconds, the burn lights up a face that stops me cold every time I watch it back. Flat, almost human in its proportions, carrying absolutely no malice in it at all, just cold, patient observation, like it's grating him. Bigfoot sidesteps the flare without any real urgency, walks over to a moss-covered boulder, and pushes. The boulder rolls straight into Hale's pelvis, pinning him against the loose scree, and just like that, the last ranger standing is the last ranger down. Hale's body cam tips up toward a dark, empty sky, his breathing already ragged, and he keys his radio one final time, ordering whoever might still be listening to acknowledge his transmission, his voice carrying every ounce of command he has left in him. Bigfoot steps into frame, leans down over him, opens its mouth, and answers him back in his own voice, his own baritone, his own authority, repeating his final order back to him word for word with an inflection so exact it sounds like a recording rather than a mimic. Then it just turns and walks off, leaving him pinned there to bleed out in the cold while his own voice keeps bouncing off the canyon walls for 4 more minutes before the breathing on the track finally goes quiet. The recovery photo shows that boulder still sitting exactly where it landed, and underneath it, his crushed radio and his loaded flare gun, both useless in the end. The forensic audio team pulls a 10-minute file off that radio, and the first 5 minutes are exactly what you'd expect. His death rattle slowing down in real time. The second 5 minutes are the part nobody in that lab was prepared for. Bigfoot's voice reciting his military serial number, his wife's name, and his home address. Information it had no earthly way of gathering except by pulling it straight out of his own sub-vocalized dying thoughts. Bigfoot didn't just kill Captain Hale. Bigfoot went through his head on the way out. Camera 1 gives me the widest angle in the whole archive, a valley-wide overview at 5:30 as the sun starts coming up over the ridgelines. And this is where the file stops being about 4 individual deaths and starts looking like a system. 2 juvenile shapes come out of the tree line first, moving calm and unhurried, and they don't touch a single body because there are no bodies left to touch. Instead, they move from kill site to kill site, gathering up helmets, vests, boots, whatever gear got left behind, and hauling it all back to a clearing where they lay it out in 4 neat, deliberate piles, one for each ranger, arranged with a kind of ritual care that has no reason to exist unless it means something to them. Bigfoot arrives last, walks straight to Dex's recovered audio recorder sitting among the gear, and plays that breathing loop back one more time into the open morning air, and both juveniles lift their heads toward the sound at exactly the same moment, like students following a lesson. That's the detail that stays with me longest out of everything in this footage, the idea that whatever happened to these 4 rangers overnight wasn't just an attack, it was a demonstration, something Bigfoot was actively teaching to the next generation standing beside it. A dense fog bank rolls into that clearing faster than any fog has a right to move, swallowing the piles, the juveniles, and Bigfoot itself. And by the time Camera 1 clears up enough to see anything again, the valley is empty, like none of it ever happened at all, except for 4 cameras worth of footage saying otherwise. Every time I think I've reached the bottom of this file, another detail surfaces that pushes the whole picture further than I want it to go. And that's really the through line of this entire night. 4 trained rangers walked into that valley with radios, flares, and each other, and Bigfoot took every one of those advantages and turned it into exactly the tool needed to end them.